Welcome to Love, Laughter, and Limits. I'm Tom Dozier, and this lesson is Stop Using Coercion. It doesn't work. This class will help you understand how we routinely use coercion with our children and why it doesn't produce the results we want. I would like to first acknowledge Glenn Latham for his 30-plus years of work in this field and for developing much of the content of this lesson. So what is coercion? Coercion is trying to force another person to act or choose a certain way. In this case, trying to deny the child the personal freedom to choose. And, we are really responsible for them, but they really need to learn to choose well. And what coercion is in the home is trying to make the child do something or not do something. And the problem with coercion is that it encourages a child to escape, avoid, and counter-coerce or get even. And this is true with husbands, wives, employees, very common effect of coercion. Escape means you want the pain to stop, so we'll do whatever it takes to get it to stop. Okay, Mom, I'll do it. Doesn't mean it. They just say, please stop talking. They'll avoid you. This aversive interaction is kind of painful and uncomfortable for the child, so they'll just stay away. And then they will get fed up after a while and they'll fight back and try to get even. And all of these things harm your relationship with your child. And we need to stay close to our kids. As a parent, the parent-child relationship is the number one priority. You want to build and maintain a close, positive relationship with your children because it feels good, because of the connection, because of the warmth and the positive experiences. But the closer you are to your children, the greater the positive influence you'll have on them. So we need to maintain this relationship not just for the feel-good connection, this human connection that we need and family connection, but because it has a huge positive effect overall on your child. Now, when it comes to kids not doing what we want them to do, we can use coercion to try to make them do what we want them to do. We can get them to comply, but compliance is not the same as change. See, a child can be forced to comply, but they will try to escape your influence and escape you, and they will escape to areas of risk. Dr. Latham has identified such areas as drugs, alcohol, tobacco, school failure. They will escape your influence to unhealthy peers and peer pressures, to pornography, sex, self-denigration, and even self-destruction. This happens all the time when the parent becomes coercive or is continually coercive with the child, and it puts that distance and the child wants to get away. Now, coercion enters the parent-child relationship at about 14 months. And language starts to become functional, and a little toddler or a little baby says, no. And you say, Pop, don't you say no to me. And they go off and do it. And it seems like, well, that's the way you get it done. And it seems to work. And in fact, coercion does force the behavior to happen. But the problem is that the long-term cumulative effects of coercion build and build, such that it takes more coercion to get things done, and you get this accumulated avoidance effect where it becomes uncomfortable to be around you. Until about 14 and a half, many of these kids will go into what Dr. Latham calls overt escape, avoidance, and counter-coercion. Basically, they will say, I don't want to, and you can't make me. You can just shove it. I'm out of here. Only they'll probably use more colorful language than that. So, Dr. Latham gives this caution. Do not suppose that short-term compliance achieved using coercive means leads to long-term gains, because it doesn't. Coercion produces only short-term compliance followed by long-term losses. And that's something you can just count on. It produces short-term compliance followed by long-term losses. Now, this class is going to go over the top 10 things that we routinely do with our children that are coercive. And when we do have coercive interactions with our kids, it's almost always because they've done something we don't like, or they're not doing something we wanted to do. And so these are the things that we do to try to address that inappropriate child behavior. The first one is questioning. To ask a child to explain why he or she misbehaved. Now there's 4 reasons why you really should not ask your children questions about their inappropriate behavior. First, it encourages lying, evasion, and defensiveness. Right? You say, why did you hit your sister? I didn't hit my sister. Why are you accusing me? Why are you always picking on me? And so it doesn't produce a positive effect. You know, if you go to a child and say, it's got little black crumbs, Oreo crumbs around its mouth, small child, and you say, did you take a cookie? What's the answer going to be? No. See? You're going to lie about it. The answer is rarely acceptable. And it gives a huge amount of adult attention to that inappropriate behavior. And then sometimes it even makes you look incompetent. Whose backpack is this? Well, Dad, you just took me to the store and I bought the blue one and Sarah got the pink one. You know? We know whose backpack it is. Why are we asking such a silly question? We just don't want it on the floor. That's why we're doing it, and we don't know what else to do. So when addressing a child's behavior problem, never ask a question if you already know the answer. Like the cookie, did you eat a cookie? You know what the answer to that is. You won't accept the answer. Why did you hit your sister? Well, I hit her because she was playing, she got into my drawer and was messing with my stuff. You're not going to say, oh, that makes perfect sense. You should have hit her. Why didn't you hit her again? You're not going to do that. And you really don't want an answer. You want compliance. My wife heard this story unfold in a Walmart here in our local town. And it was in the sewing section, the material section of Walmart. And this was a young child, maybe 4 or 5, and he was obviously messing with the stuff on the rack. And his mother sees him and says, Johnny, stop that right now. What were you thinking? And Johnny said, fun. Well, he gave an honest answer, but Mom didn't want the answer. She just wanted compliance. So sometimes you need to ask some questions. You can ask questions only to get information for problem solving. If you need to know what the homework assignment is, if you need some understanding of how this all started, then you might want to ask a question. By the way, you're not going to get to the bottom of it because there is no bottom of it, so don't try. But you might need a little bit of information. The other thing that you can often do is ask for a statement of your expectations. So Johnny has just hit his little sister, and you could ask the question, Johnny, how do I expect you to treat your little sister? And he may say, not hit her. And you say, that's right. Thank you. Now that's okay. That's about the one question you can ask. The second coercive is criticism, to find fault. And we use this all the time. Something about the kid is just not up to par. Their homework is too messy. It's not done completely enough. Their bed's not straight enough. Their clothes aren't neat enough in their drawers when they put them away. They're not acting appropriately in a certain situation. We use criticism all the time. And criticism really comes back to bite us. Criticism really tends to reduce global child behavior. If you start getting the child frustrated, they may push back and ignore you for a long time, but if they're going to do their homework and then get criticized about it, why even do the homework? You know, I don't normally meet with teenagers, but this mom just felt I had to understand her son. So I'd met with this teenager, we were talking about what he liked to do, and I said to him, he's talking about cooking, and I said, oh, you like to cook? What do you cook? He said, I don't cook. I said, why not? He said, well, because my parents are always, you know, telling me something's not right. I said, well, when they tell you that something's not quite right, doesn't that motivate you to work harder, to do it better? He goes, makes me want to do nothing. And that's an effective criticism. So the next one is sarcasm or teasing, to make fun of a child. And really there has to be some level of truth to make it funny. So sarcasm, picking at the child, is just another way of criticism where you're getting a chuckle out of it and the child is getting irritated by it. Now, in this day and age, most parents believe that they shouldn't spank their children. And so, well, if you're not going to spank them, what do you do when they misbehave? And the answer is that nowadays we talk them to death. We use logic and we talk on and on and on. And in this context, logic is explaining with more than one or two brief statements why a behavior is good or bad for the child. Yeah, one or two brief statements, that is good to provide. Beyond that, we just try to talk them until they go, oh, now I understand how important schoolwork is. I will always do my homework. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen. Now, arguing gets a little more heated and it goes back and forth. Well, you need to do this. No, I don't. You need to choose better friends. I like my friends. I choose good friends. You have really scummy friends. I have the best friends in the world. At least they're sincere and good people. They're not a bunch of hypocrites. And see, this trying to convince the child that you as the parent are right and the child is wrong just doesn't work. It's been said that arguing with a child is like wrestling with a pig. You both get dirty and the pig loves it. So just avoid the arguing. Now, there's a couple of reasons that arguing create problems. First, these prolonged, unnecessary discussions, when we have these combative kind of arguing discussions, damaging, unintended things get said that leave a lasting impression. You know, sometimes we're trying to convince them to do their homework and they're fighting back. And we finally just get so frustrated that we say something like, well, fine, you're just too stupid to do the homework anyway. Oops, and it comes slipping out of your mouth and you want to pull it back, but you're so frustrated that you can't. These arguments delays the onset of reconciliation. It takes away from what could be otherwise good times together, and it strengthens the child's position, which is exactly what we don't want to have happen. You see, if you start talking about something with your child, and it only takes 7 seconds to see if it's going to come together about a solution or not. And if it's not going to come together about a solution, you end up engaging in what's called verbal polarizing, where you state your position, the child states his, you reinforce your position, the child restates his position with some argument behind it and typically getting stronger, and then you're stating yours again and the child's stating his again, and you're just getting further and further and further apart. And in the end, what the child said is more influential to the child than what you said. So you're actually just getting the child to dig in his heels and actually move further away from where you wanted him to be anyway. Now, this verbal polarizing, this arguing, is important whether you're arguing against the child or for the child. See, if you're saying they need to do more homework and they need to work harder, and they're saying no, they don't, well, if you don't win the argument, the child gives you all the reasons that homework's stupid. But you also get into trouble when the child says, I don't have any friends. And you say, oh, sure you do. And you name a couple. And no, they're not really my friends. And the child restates his position as to why he shouldn't be having any friends. And you restate your position as to why he should have so many friends. And once again, it gets worse and worse. If the child says, teenager, young lady would often say, well, I'm not pretty. Now, it would be much better to respond with, you know, being self-conscious is a pretty common thing for a teenager. I think you're pretty, but I'm your dad. And drop it. But if you say, oh yes, honey, you are pretty, And the child says, oh, no, no, I'm not. And you say, well, yes, I think you're one of the most beautiful young ladies I know. And then the child starts telling you how bad they look compared to these other kids. And it just gets worse and worse. And at the end, the child has said 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 times how they're not pretty. And they've even gotten worse and worse and worse, that they're the ugliest person in the school. You know, they just get extreme in their statements. Well, that just reinforces the very thing that you want to avoid. Okay, so the next one is threats, to warn a child of some extreme punishment. If you don't put away those toys, we're going to throw them all away. If you don't get your homework done right now, you're grounded for a month. And either the child sees through it, or if you try to carry it out, you end up paying worse than the child. My son taught English in a foreign Far East country, and it was quite coercive typically, and in this school it was, and the co-teacher who was in charge of classroom management, which was a local teacher, was very coercive with these little kindergarten, first grade kids. And so she had this new coercive way to get the kids to behave so well. She pulled out her cell phone and said, I'm going to call my friend who's a policeman, and if you don't get that work done right now, he's going to come and arrest you and take you away. Well, scared some of the kids, and they did it. It's very upsetting, but then pretty soon they see right through it. And so threats just don't work. Now force, that's number 7. That can either be physical or verbal, trying to use pain and fear or excessive force to make the child behave. You might include hitting and shouting and that sort of thing. Now, I want to say that this is not escorting a 3-year-old upstairs for bedtime or away from the park, right? This is trying to use the pain and fear and excessive force. And this is really dangerous, and especially as our kids get older, you want to avoid any kind of forceful interplay because it makes the child dig in harder, and if you ever grab a teenager, they're going to fight back. So you really want to avoid using force. In fact, I remember a story of a friend of mine who had a teenager who wouldn't get out of bed in the morning, and he came in there and it was time for school. He says, get your butt out of bed right now and get to school. And she jumped up and she ran out of the house, and they didn't see her for 2 days. So it may give you some instantaneous action, but it doesn't give you long-term loss. That's the thing. Immediate gain, long-term loss. Now, when it comes to talking to our kids and raising our volume and becoming forceful, we're doing just the wrong thing. If you want your children to listen to you, keep your voice soft. If you want your children to hear what you're saying, you need to limit the number of the words. You want to keep it short and sweet. And if you want your children to behave well, you have to keep emotion out of your voice. If you're saying, why are you doing that? Get in there right now and get started on your homework. Well, it's just going to create more bad behavior. So keep that emotion out of your voice. Unless it's happy emotion, right? Keep it happy. So the next coercive is despair. To feel helpless or hopeless, to be begging or pleading with a child, to say, I give up. Oh, please do your homework. I don't know what else to do to get you to do your homework. Oh, I give up. I guess there's no way to get you to clean up that stinking, filthy room of yours. And there's 2 really bad messages with despair. One is it says that you don't have the skills that you need as a parent to be able to handle the situation, that you're incompetent. And the second thing is it says that the child is really beyond hope. There's no, you're giving up, there's no hope for the child. Both of those are very bad messages. Now, number 9 is nagging. To irritate a child by constant scolding and urging. And we know what nagging is, where we go back over and over and over again. And it doesn't have to be loud, and it doesn't have to be mean, And it doesn't have to sound ugly. It just has to be that persistent bugging the kid. And I've had a mom call me with a tween, a 11 or 12-year-old who was just shutting down and wouldn't do his homework. And when we talked about it, we talked about being coercive, and she says, but I never raised my voice and I've never spanked him. Yeah, but you've just been so irritating at pestering him to make him do it. And so it doesn't have to be loud nagging. It can be quiet. Produces the same effect. Might take a little longer, but produces the same effect. And then guilt trips. Trying to make the child feel guilty by using the previous 9 techniques, right? Using those 9 coercive, just to say, well, I can't believe you would do that. What is your father going to say when he hears how badly you behaved? What would your grandmother think if she hears what you did to your little brother? You should feel ashamed of yourself. All these things, we do it because we don't know what to do. And we want the child to take responsibility, but guilt trips doesn't work either. Now, there's another problem with these coercive, ugly interactions, hostile interactions with our kids. From the works of Dr. Gerald Patterson, we read, research studies have consistently shown that family members tend to get what they give. Those who are hostile and irritable in their interactions with other family members tend to receive the same treatment in return. So, you know, the rougher we are with our little kids, the rougher they're going to be with us. So be nice to your kids. They'll be nice to you because they learn from our example. Well, what can you do? I had a father once, and I was teaching this in a multi-week parenting class, and he says, "You've taken away all my parenting skills." Well, what can you do other than coercion? Well, the research in human behavior has shown that the most effective way to get rid of problem behavior in children is to teach and build desirable behavior rather than trying to punish the undesirable behavior. So watch the other Love, Laughter, and Limits classes, and you'll learn what does work. Your whole family will be happier, and your kids will behave better also. So thank you for watching. Stop using coercion. It doesn't work. I'm Tom Dozier, wishing you an abundance of love and laughter in your family, along with limits to help your children behave well and be happy. Thank you.